So he bought each of his daughters a velocipede, and I don't know if Uncle Eugene had one too. But he, as I said, my grandmother's brother was an inventor. We'll talk about that along the way. But anyway, if you can conjure up the pictures of those ladies managing their skirts and their velocipedes, then you can imagine my grandmother and Ada and Flossie going out on their velocipedes, riding around Lockport. And she used to call my bicycle a velocipede too. But that was one of the things that I have enjoyed ever since is the vocabulary that I learned from my grandmother. See, are you taking your reticule? Oh, my bag? Yeah, it's right here.
So she got her degree at Clarkson, as did your grandfather. They got married where?
I don't know. There were no pictures. That's interesting. I guess I just thought it was before photography, which isn't true. But yeah. I do have pictures of my grandfather, Edwin, who died in 1914 maybe. Here we go again. Where's Lydia? My sister knows these things. She keeps track of the numbers better than I do. And I guess my next interview, perhaps I can get the numbers ahead of time so that I don't keep,
Cheat sheet.
Yeah, doing this. But so they actually, my grandfather worked in Colorado, and my grandmother, when she had graduated, they must have been separated. Maybe when he went to Colorado, I don't know, because she worked in Manhattan, Kansas, for a couple of years, and then maybe they got married, and then they had Caroline, who's my aunt, older by 2 years maybe than my father. So she was Caroline Spear. Buskirk, Van Buskirk, and
Yeah, tell how that happened from Buskirk to Van Buskirk.
and then came Roger Barnes. My great grandmother's name on my father's side was Rogers, and if you may have seen that, some of you have been to Clayton Cemetery and seen the Rogers tombstone or the name. So I think that's why my father was named Roger, after the Rogers of his grandmother. Anyway, but I am descended from a Van Buskirk who came to New Amsterdam, named Lawrence. Is it Hans Lawrence Van Buskirk? Because his name was so common that they would add an extra name to it. So Van Buskirk was to make sure that you got Andriessen, the right Andriessen was Van Buskirk. And then, so that's going back to the Dutch times of New York City. And so the Van Buskirks you will find all over because they came to the States such a long time ago. And so first they were in the New York City area, and then you find them sort of going up the Hudson and then going west. But somewhere along the way, they decided the van was too much trouble, so they just became Buskirks. But my grandmother was Giggy, that is, apparently, was very, felt like that was something that shouldn't be dropped, that it was worth having. So she used Van Buskirk. So if you meet Buskirks, you can ask, but you're usually related to them. Buskirks or Van Buskirks. Scattered and collected along the way. Some in Nebraska. So that's what my interlocutor is referring to, saying, why is it Buskirk or Van Buskirk? Because Gigi wanted it to be Van Buskirk, and that's who I am today.
And isn't there a cemetery or something, or a town?
Yes, there is. Over near Albany, Buskirk's Bridge. Those people are related to us, and that's what I said. Starting in New York, and then going up the Hudson, and then going west. The pattern of the country, kind of. But Edwin Buskirk was the son of a Great Lakes sailor. So that's what my great-grandfather was. And that is fascinating. You can look it up and see the seamanship that was necessary because there were such storms on the Great Lakes. But starting in Clayton, you could thread your way all the way west on the Great Lakes. And so that was a career. And that was what Edwin's father had done, and then retired and stayed in Clayton.
So what was his name? Edwin's father's name?
That's what I'm trying to remember. It's up at Clayton.
Yeah, it's on the tomb of,
What's her name?
Yeah, we'll come back to that, Mom.
Something Rogers, and I can't remember her name either. Help! You've waited too long.
No.
This on film.
We can look those up more readily, Mom. But the memories we can't look up. So, anyway, so tell me more about. We've heard sort of the Edwin and Florence side of the story, but we haven't heard much about the Seville. Edwin and Francis.
Yeah. All right. So that's my father's side of the family, and then my mother. Had a very interesting life, Elsa Ruth Seville, and her dad was born in 1876, George Hugh Seville, the seventh of 8 children, and grew up outside Pittsburgh in an area that we explored as a family in 20... You were
It was
there,
after
right?
Dad passed away. So it must have been 2021? A couple years ago.
When Brandon and Rachel were living there, and so we decided,
In
if
Pittsburgh.
not now, when?
Yeah.
Pittsburgh it shall be. Because we always used that as shorthand, that grandfather had grown up near Pittsburgh. But we actually went and saw Seville, the Seville name in places north of Pittsburgh. Yes, this is some. And if this interview gets put together in more than photographic style, you will see pictures of some of the Seville, the cemetery and the firehouse that has Seville on the name. So,
School.
yeah,
There's a
school, yeah.
A fruit
Let's see.
orchard, wasn't it?
Well, this is part of the interest that I can now tell you. I don't know how long I have. We're going to go another 22 minutes or something. The family came from Ireland and kept the wit of Ireland. And so my great-grandfather, Franklin, John Franklin Seville. I had always thought that he was a fruit farmer. And then when we looked more closely at his history, it seems he was a banker. So he might have started out with some property and doing fruit farming, and then somehow got more property and became a banker. Because in those days, I think there was more fluidity to people's careers. There still is, you meet someone that you went to high school with and find out what he did so far in life, and it turns out to be not what he set out as. But anyway, so the Sevilles, and now I have a picture of John Franklin Seville that I look at, and he's holding pruners. He's got on a very nice suit and tie and looks pretty much like a businessman, and he's holding these pruners. And now I think, oh, this was a joke. He's like, oh, it's just me and my pruners and my apple trees. But, I mean, can you really tell what a person was like? I spent quite a bit of time with my grandfather over the years, and so, yes, he would be pranking. He did a lot of amusing things. One of the things that I remember my grandfather doing was he'd be taking the train, and so he would get out his nice big handkerchief, and he would be waving it and wiping his eyes to show how sad he was to say goodbye. But it was a joke. I don't know. It was for humor.
Who's being a ham?
Yes, being a ham. Anyway, and my grandmother, Jessie Maud Merritt Green Seville, came from near Newburgh, New York, on the Hudson. She actually, I have it written down where she was born, and I think it's probably disappeared. Although maybe there's a suburb there, I don't know. But I'll just tell you one thing, because I'm not sure how long we're going to be going on with this. But when my grandmother was a young person, she and maybe a group of them skated on the Hudson from Newburgh to the city.
Wow.
And I just happened to find online somebody's exclamatory posting saying that the Hudson had frozen, and it hasn't done that. It's done it 3 times since 1843 or something. And I probably got that wrong. I told you about dates. But that always, that was like a magical fairy tale kind of skated on the Hudson. And of course, indeed, right now, you don't skate on the Hudson normally, unless there's a terribly frozen freeze. But if you've ever read Hans Brinker and the Silver Skates about skating on the canals in Holland, in Netherlands, then you can understand that for me, because I was a great reader, I have to confess or state that right up front, that I knew about the silver skates, the skating on the canals. You can skate for miles and miles, and they give prizes and have contests and get out there and skate. And I don't know if they do that still, but in the days of Hans Brinker, they did. Which is a great story. In case you have children, you can read that to them. And then you can add about their great-great-grandmother, Jessie Merritt.
So she was a Green, and she grew up in Newburgh.
No.
Oh.
She was Jessie Maud Merritt, and she had a life which shaped her to be a saintly woman. So Jessie Maud Merritt and her fiance wanted to go to China as missionaries. His name was Walter. Walter Green was the name of her first husband, whom I'm naming as a fiance in this account. Anyway, I don't know what year that was, but it was before 1900. And